I talk a lot about goals as if every single goal is the same, but here's the truth, they're not all the same. They're all different. And there are different types of goals. It's important to understand the differences because we approach them differently, we measure them differently, and we can use them in different ways to keep us motivated and to achieve our goals, to track our progress. Hi, I'm Chris LeBrun, your host of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. As someone who's never been afraid of dreaming big and going for it all, I often find myself with a lot on my plate. I'm a husband and father, a nonprofit fundraiser, and an entrepreneur. What I've realized is my view of productivity was pretty toxic. After decades of believing that in order to do more, you had to work harder, I began to see productivity as this beautiful thing. Holistic productivity is the idea that you can accomplish your professional, personal, and purpose-driven goals in a healthy way, and doing so will make you happier and more fulfilled. Join me each week as we break down myths about productivity, share practical tips for maximizing your time, energy, and focus, and hear from others about their productivity journey. This is the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here for episode number 43 of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. My name is Chris LeBrun. I'm your host. I'm a productivity coach, and I'm so glad that you are here. You know, I was thinking about it just the other day. Actually, it was more of an argument with myself. When you think about it, there are two types of listeners. Okay, we can boil all of you into two types of listeners. There are first-time listeners. This is the first episode, and you're like, what in the world is this holistic productivity thing all about? And the second group is long-time listeners. You've listened to 1, 2, 3, 10, 42 other episodes, and you know what this is about. You keep coming back each and every week. And I wasn't sure, this is where the argument started in my head. I wasn't sure which type of listener gets me more excited. Is it the one that is here for the first time and they are checking it out? Or is it the one that's been here over and over? I'm not sure which one I'm more grateful for. Ultimately, I decided it doesn't really matter. You all rock. Thank you so much for being here. I hope all of you, whether you're first-time or long-time listeners, stick around and become even longer-time listeners. And the best way to do that is by hitting the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, on YouTube if you watch it there. But no matter how you listen, watch, consume, we're just so glad that you are here and grateful for you being here. I've got a great episode for you today. We're going to dive into that now. You know, I talk a lot about goals as if every single goal is the same, but here's the truth, they're not all the same. They're all different. And there are different types of goals. It's important to understand the differences, to even know that there are different types of goals, but it's important to understand the differences because we approach them differently, we measure them differently, and we can use them in different ways to keep us motivated and to achieve our goals, to track our progress. So today we're going to look at the different types of goals, when each type is useful, and how to use them. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. There's actually 5 different types of goals that we're going to look at today. I'm going to list them off, and then we'll come back and dive into each one of them one by one. But the first is outcome goals. That is how we define direction. Then we have performance goals. This lets us sharpen our focus. Our process goals will help us create momentum. Growth goals will build capacity. And finally, impact goals provide meaning. So let's start out by looking at outcome goals. Now, these are what you traditionally think of when you set goals, because you either hit the goal or you don't. They're binary. They're clear. They're not ambiguous, right? You either reach the goal or you don't. Now, like I said, this is kind of the most common type of goal that we think about, but it is not the most important. When we talk about defining success for outcome goals, we're asking, what does done look like? So here are some examples. You want to pay off your credit card balance in full. That is an outcome goal. You want to complete a professional certification program. You either complete it and get the certificate or you don't. You want to launch a website. It's binary. You either launch it or it stays on your computer. Now, with all of these, there's a clear end point when you know that you've completed the goal. There's a clear finish line. Okay, so the website is launched and now I'm done with this goal. Now, how do you set outcome goals well? What is the best way to set an outcome goal so that you can use it in your goal journey? Well, you want to keep them simple and objective. Like I said, it is usually black and white whether or not you have finished them or not. Don't overload them with conditions. We will talk about some ways to do that when we look at the other goals, but for your objective goals, just make it simple, not a whole lot of extra things. You also need to determine if achieving this goal is actually within your control to complete it, or does it depend heavily on others? Why does that matter? Well, we talked about completing a website. You may know how to code your own website. I don't. So when I launched my website, I was using web developers to do that for me. So yes, it was my goal and it was very black and white. It was very objective. We're going to launch the website or we're not. But it was not in my control. And so we're going to approach it differently if I am in charge or if I am managing somebody else who is in charge of that goal. Now, there may be circumstances that prevent you from achieving this goal. Paying off your credit card balance might get interrupted if your air conditioning unit goes out in your house and you all of a sudden have to buy this whole new air conditioning system that you weren't planning for. So factor those things in as well and be gracious with yourself when something like that happens. It's important to recognize that there may also be circumstances that prevent you from achieving the goal, even if it is something that you are completely in control of. The example of paying off your credit card balance, that may get put on hold if the air conditioning or the heater in your house goes out, right? The HVAC system goes kaput. You may need to reprioritize the money that you were using to pay off that credit card balance. It's also very important to be careful if the outcome goal becomes your motivation. Now, some of those examples that I gave are very motivating. Paying off your credit card bill, getting that certificate, those can be exciting and motivating. But because it is so binary, because it is so objective, you don't want to get caught in losing all motivation if you are not achieving your goal as quickly as you had hoped. And again, we'll talk about some other ways that we can keep you motivated when we look at the other goals. Outcome goals are clarifying, they're not sustaining. And like I said, motivation usually comes from someplace else. Yes, you want to pay off that credit card, but you may also want to take a trip to Hawaii for your anniversary. So which one is more motivating in that moment? And hopefully we know the answer for that. But again, you just want to make sure that you are getting your motivation from some other place. Okay, let's look at the next type of goal, and that is the performance goal. With performance goals, we are asking the question, how well do I want to do this? Or how well do I want to achieve the goal? Here you are setting a standard or a benchmark, usually for your outcome goal. Examples, right? I want to reduce the amount of time it takes me to respond to clients so that my average response time is under 24 hours on business days. That is a performance goal. Or I want to save 20% of my monthly income. Or I want to complete a work project at least 2 weeks before it's actually due. Now, performance goals are often paired with outcome goals to give more context to your goal. Sometimes it's not just enough to complete the goal. We want to know how we did in the process. And that's where these performance goals come in. Now, it's important to be realistic given your current season If you've got multiple positions open on your team, completing that work project 2 weeks before the deadline might not be possible anymore. And it's important not to get so focused on the performance metric that you ignore the accomplishment altogether. Achieving goals is a huge thing. And so, like with your savings, if you wanted to save 20% of your monthly income, but you only saved 15% of it, don't beat yourself up. You're doing a lot better than most people out there. So be generous with yourself. Okay? Don't beat yourself up. Or if you complete that work project a week before the deadline, again, that's okay. You may want to analyze why you were off your performance goal, of that 20% or the 2 weeks ahead of schedule. But that is going to be information that's helpful for next time rather than a reason to beat yourself up this time. Okay? So we've looked at outcome goals, we've looked at performance goals. The next type of goal that we're going to look at is a process goal. These are the actions that you can take consistently to make success more likely. With process goals, we're looking at how you achieve the goal. And I'm going to throw out a little warning here. This has to be a process that actually moves the needle. It can't just be something that makes you feel productive. What we're doing here is we're building behaviors and habits. So it's important to make these goals specific and repeatable. And you may want to ask yourself, is this something that I can do on my worst day? Okay. So how do we set process goals? Well, you want to anchor them either to time or to triggers. Creating a routine can help you achieve your process goals because you get into the habit of doing those over and over and over again. Process goals allow us to focus on consistency over intensity. And I'll give you some examples here. Planning your week every Sunday. I call this my Sunday strategy. And if I do this, I am going to be better prepared for the week. I mean, it's just been proven over and over and over. When I plan my week ahead of time, I am much better prepared to have a successful week than when I don't. That is a process goal. Here's another example: calling X number of clients every day or every week. Now, if I do this, I'm going to keep the relationship strong and I'm going to be ready to serve my clients when they are ready for my services, for my products, for whatever it is that I'm offering them. Here's another example: spend the first 30 minutes of each workday on a priority task. When I do this, I won't get caught on unimportant things and I'll be able to hit my priorities a lot easier. Process goals are great when you have a really huge goal or something that's going to take you a long time to achieve, because you set these process goals small enough and they sustain you through this entire goal process that you're doing. Author John Acuff talks about this in his book, All It Takes Is a Goal. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I've set a goal for 2026 to read 36 books. Now, when I say read, I'm talking about Audible because I've got them going while I'm commuting or whatever. But I have a goal to read 36 books this year. Now, I've already got 2 down, so 34 more to go. But a year is a long time. And believe me, I can get lost somewhere around book 17 in the middle of July. And then it's like 2 months before I read another book. And then I'm not going to hit my goal of 36 books. So John Acuff says, rather than setting your goal to read 36 books this year, set a goal to read 1 hour a day for 5 days a week. Now, this gives me something that I can easily manage day in and day out. I can track my progress. I can check if I'm reading my hour a day, and I can also catch up if I need to. If I realize, man, last week I only got 3 hours in, I can find time maybe this week to read a little bit more and to catch up. It's a lot quicker feedback than trying to manage 36 books. And if I'm able to achieve my process goal of reading 5 hours a week, I should hit my 36 books for the year. I should be able to hit that goal no problem. So like I said, process goals are great for these long-term annual goals to help you stay focused. But there is a caution, and it's don't confuse busyness with progress, right? We want to make sure that we are doing things that actually help us reach the goal. Next, we're going to look at growth goals. The focus here is on who I'm becoming as I pursue this. What we're looking here is to increase our skills, our mindset, or our capacity. And what you want to ask is, how will I notice growth if it's not easily measurable? Because sometimes it's not something you can quantify, right? So I'll give you some examples. Develop stronger emotional resilience by practicing reflection after difficult conversations. Okay? Not something I can quantify, but man, that's a great growth goal. Here's another example. Become more confident facilitating group discussions by leading out once a month. And another example, increase my comfort with public visibility by sharing original ideas online once a week. Put yourself out there. Put yourself out there once a week, sharing some ideas and seeing if the internet tears you down. Notice we added some process goals in there by adding regular metrics for focusing on these goals, either weekly or monthly. So again, we can combine these different types of goals to maximize them. So how do we set growth goals? Well, we want to frame them around practice, around exposure, or around reflection. Use qualitative indicators such as more confident or less reactive. Usually those types of things make for bad goals, more revenue, right? But in this case, like we said, they can't always be quantitative, so we need to have those qualitative indicators. Now, growth goals are not necessarily things that you check off and never come back to, right? You may want to revisit these areas of growth over and over and over. Just be careful not to over measure growth. Growth goals can kind of lose power when forced into rigid metrics. So be careful of that. Now, the last one we're going to look at is impact goals. Who benefits if this all goes well, if I achieve this goal? Whose life or work or experience is improved because I reached this goal? Now, it's important to make sure that the impact is aligned with my values, not simply external validation. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but we want them to be aligned with our values. Here's some examples of impact goals. Volunteer monthly at an organization aligned with your personal values. Design work systems that reduce stress and improve clarity for your team. Or how about mentoring early career professionals over the next year? So how do you set impact goals? Well, your impact goals should inform your why rather than pressuring your how. We'll get the how from our process goals. We want this to be about the why. Focus on intentional contribution rather than guaranteed results. There's no guarantee that your mentees will stay at your company. In fact, I have trained employees only for them to leave and go somewhere else. But you know what? That mentoring, that training, that still has impact and value on their life. So just remember that when you are measuring success. So there are the 5 types of goals that we looked at: outcome, performance, process, growth, and impact. And I want to put this into an example that might make it easier to understand how they're all connected and related and how you can use them on a single project or task or goal. And unless you're a first-time listener, you probably know that I've taken up running not long ago. And so we're going to use running in this example. My outcome goal for running can be to complete a half marathon this year. The performance goal is doing it under 2 hours. Another example of a performance goal is getting a personal record, a PR, or improving my time from my last half marathon by 5 minutes. My process goal is training 3 times a week leading up to the race. My growth goal is becoming a more disciplined and confident athlete. And the impact goal is raising money for a charity I care about through running the race. You see the relationship here? See how they're all connected to this idea of running or this goal of running, but I can use all of these different ways to look at that, and they bring so much depth to just a goal of I want to run. It's also important to realize that no single goal type carries the whole weight of motivation. There are going to be times when one goal is going to be more relevant than another, and this may shift and change during the course of your goal journey, right? I may be more motivated at times by getting under that 2 hours. I may be more motivated by the money that I'm going to raise for charity. So all of these things can help in different times, and I'm just giving myself more opportunities for success because I have designed all of these different goal types into this one area. So let's go back and recap what these types are and how we can use them. Again, outcome goals give direction. Performance goals sharpen focus. Process goals create momentum. Growth goals build capacity, and impact goals supply meaning. Now, you don't have to identify every single goal every single time, but it is helpful to reflect when setting goals to see how many you can create to give your goal journey as much depth as possible. Okay? So that's it for the show today. Real quick look at this. Again, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to put show notes online. You can find those at holisticproductivity.com/43. Make sure you check those out. Also, like I said at the beginning, hopefully you are subscribed on your favorite podcast platform. If not, please do that right now. Or if you watch on YouTube, make sure you are subscribed so you get the next episode as soon as it drops on Tuesday. Also, if you liked the show and found it valuable, I'd love for you to rate the show. That just helps others find us and they can learn about goals as well. Be sure to follow at Wholistic Productivity on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, Substack, all of the social medias. I provide a lot of great productivity tips and motivation throughout the week, so you'll want to find those. And I know I've talked about this before, but check out the Holistic Productivity community on the school platform. People coming from around the world to help each other, to focus on productivity, to share advice. There's a lot of great resources there for you. It's a growing community, and I want you to be a part of it. Make sure you go check that out. It's absolutely free. So go check that out. And man, I would love to see you in school. Thanks again for listening in. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but if you're a longtime listener, you know this by now. The goal of this podcast, the reason that I do it, is to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. And I'm so excited to watch you do that. Take care. We'll see you next time.